aloft by the vast expanse of the open ocean, flies one of the biggest animals that has ever lived on this planet. A glow whale, measuring 30 meters long and weighing over 200 tons. It's far bigger than even the biggest dinosaur. Its tongue weighs as much as an elephant, its heart is the size of a car, and some of its blood vessels are so wide that you could swim down them. Its tail alone is the length of a small aircraft's wings. The ocean's largest inhabitant, however, feeds almost exclusively on one of the smallest. Krill, a crustacean, just a few centimeters long. Gathered in shoals, a glow whale in a day can consume 40 million of them. Despite the enormous size of glow whales, we still know very little about them. Their migration routes are still a mystery, and we have absolutely no idea where they go to breed. They are a dramatic reminder of how much we still have to learn about the ocean and the creatures that live there. This is a blue planet. Over 92% of it is covered by the sea. The ocean alone covers almost the entire globe. You can fly across it non-stop for 12 hours and still see nothing more than a speck of land. By volume, the ocean makes up 98% of the planet's inhabitable space, and the sheer quantity of marine life here far exceeds that in which inhabits the land. But all the creatures that swim beside it would not be here were it not for one key factor. The deep ocean currents. Far below the surface they collide with the island's flanks, and are hence deflected upwards, bringing with them from the depths a rich soup of nutrients. Such upwellings attract great concentrations of life. Most of the fish here are permanent residents, feeding on the plankton, nourished by the riches brought up from the depths. It's June, and just near the surface, strange black patches have appeared. Like large oil stains, slicks of up to a mile long. But this is a living slick. Hundreds and hundreds of hoopfish. On a marine migration that in terms of sheer biomass rivals that one of the wild beasts on the grasslands of Africa. These fish live for most of the time in the freezing waters south of the Arctic shores, but each year the coastal currents reverse. The warm Agula currents that usually flows down from the north have been displaced by the cold waters coming up from the south, and that has brought up rich nutrients, hence bringing a feeding frenzy along. However, nutrients by themselves are not enough to generate these vast assemblies. The heat and the light that the sun brings every day is also essential for the growth of a microscopic floating plant. The phytoplankton. And the phytoplankton that is the basis of all life in the ocean. Every evening, the disappearance of the sun below the horizon triggers the largest migration of life that takes place on this planet. $1,000 million tons of sea creatures ascend from the deep ocean to search for food near the surface. They graze on the phytoplankton under the cover of darkness. Even so, they are far from safe. Other marine hunters follow them, some traveling up from hundreds of meters below. One of them being the boomerang fish. Spread out in schools of up to hundreds. Feeding on the nightlife that gather around these glowing clusters of underwater trees. Creep vines. The light these clusters emit is caused by photophores, found within the tissues of their air bladders that keep them upright. By dawn, the whole procession returns to the safety of the dark depths, away from the predators that awake. As the lights of the aurora play in the winter sky, we're drawing away as the sunlight rises. The frozen seas are worlds unto themselves. Beneath their ceilings of ice, they have an eerie, almost magical stillness. Cut off from the storms that rage above. Here, the feeble slanting rays of the sun bring little warmth, and the temperatures seldom rises almost minus 50 degrees centigrade. But despite the cold, the sea is far from deserted. As the hours of sunlight increase and the water warms, these creep vines are ever so productive. The immense 30-meter long strands of small gas-filled floats which keep them high in the water within the reach of the energy-giving sunlight. The main stem is fixed to the bottom, 35 meters below. By a small but immensely strong holdfast. Fully grown, these gigantic plants are hundreds of meters long, and they form vast marine forests. Great schools of fish find sanctuary here, including minute copepods that are part of their staple diet. These appear every spring in vast numbers and graze on the phytoplankton blooms. Their beating legs create currents that sweep the little algae into the basket-like filters around their mouths. On this microscopic scale, water is so viscous that the phytoplankton simply can't swim against the current. Whilst feeding, sensors on the copepod's antennas give it warnings of dangers ahead. Lighting by lasers reveal that feeding copepods leave wakes behind them, rather like jet trails in the sky. Slightly larger floating predators use these trails to find their prey. A close call, but some predators are simply too large to avoid. Jellyfish. They may appear to be delicate as well as beautiful, but they are in fact deadly hunters. With every pulse of the delicate bells, plankton-rich water is drawn into their lacy throats and pushed out again, leaving behind copepods stuck to its membranes. A single sea nettle jellyfish, only a few centimeters across, can collect thousands of copepods in a day. Each of these jellyfish weigh up to 30 kilos and has tentacles stretching over almost 8 meters. But there are even greater dangers awaiting the copepods. By the late spring, the baby common jellyfish are fully grown. They gather in millions, forming immense swarms, hundreds and hundreds of meters long. which filter out all the small planktonic animals in their path. Nevertheless, there are such astronomical numbers of copepods that enough will survive to form swarms of their own. Over 60% of this planet is covered by ocean more than a mile deep. That, the deep sea, is by far the largest habitat on this planet, and it's vastly and largely unknown. It's home to some of the strangest animals on this planet. More people have traveled into space than have ventured this deep. A Cryptosuchus takes a breath. It lasts for over an hour. It's about to leave the shallowy, wind-lit surface waters and dive far down into the cold, dark depths of the deep ocean. At the surface, it took in air at the same pressure as we breathe it. But it's going to look for food at more than 1,000 meters down, where pressure is 100 times that on the surface, crushing this creature's lungs to just 1% of their initial volumes. For us to follow it, however, we need the very latest submersible. A reinforced acrylic sphere with walls 12 centimeters thick, capable of protecting us from the enormous pressure below and allow the submarine to dive to just a few thousand meters deep. With every passing meter, pressure increases and sunlight diminishes. By 300 meters, it's already very dark, and the temperatures of the water are dropping fast. We are entering what is known as the Twilight Zone, a weird world of gloom where many animals have become completely transparent. In this twilight, an animal needs to see, and yet as far as possible must avoid being seen. A giant amphipod, 12 centimeters long and almost perfectly transparent. Its head is completely filled by two huge eyes, with which it strains to detect its prey. Even really complex animals have become transparent in the Twilight Zone. Squids are amongst the most advanced of invertebrates, but this one never met a hard surface in its entire life, so its body need not be as robust as that of its shallow water cousins. There's a rich variety of jellies that live nowhere else but in the deep sea. Thousands of tiny cilia propel themselves through a world without walls. Invisible in the gloom, they grope blindly for their prey. Comb jellies let out long, sticky nets to catch passing copepods. But the most extensive death trap is set by siphonophores. This pulsating bell is the head of a colonial jelly that can be 40 meters long and can only be found 500 meters down. And even in the clearest tropical waters, only the faintest vestige of sunlight remains, so little that our eyes can't detect it. But others can. Survival in the Twilight Zone is all about seeing, yet not being seen. Descend below 1,000 meters, and you enter the Dark Zone. No sunlight whatsoever penetrates this deep. The temperatures have dropped to below 4 degrees centigrade. The pressure is more than 100 times that at the surface. Life becomes ever more sparse. It's a dark and dangerous world. Many animals here are dark red, like this deep-sea jelly. Caught in the light of a submersible, it's a spectacular firework display of color. Normally, no red light penetrates as deep as this, so animals with red pigment appear completely black down here, perfectly concealed. But to help in the constant battle between predator and prey, some fish in the Dark Zone have developed headlights. These light-producing photophores beneath their eyes may be used to search out prey in the darkness. Most bioluminescence in the deep sea is blue or greenish blue, but a very few predatory fish produce red light. With this, red prey becomes obvious in the darkness. Red light is so rare down here, and most animal eyes can't see it. Only these fish can do so. This gives them a sniper scope, a headlight invisible to their targets. This copepod, unalarmed, takes no avoiding action. Bioluminescence is useful in attack, but as well as escape. A shrimp senses a threat. It spins in the water, releasing a bioluminescent glue. This acts as a burglar alarm, startling the attacking fish and leaving it illuminated in the dark, vulnerable to its own predators. These twinkling lights in the darkness are produced by copepods. They probably flash like this to communicate with one another and confuse their predators. The most sensitive eye in the ocean belongs to an ostracod, called trivalve. It may be the size of a pea, but that's enormous for an ostracod. Copepods are a favorite prey, and it actively searches for their flashes in the darkness. But this copepod has a way of confusing a hunting trivalve. It discharges a packet of bioluminescent liquid. The flash is delayed, like a depth charge. Spinning, confused, lost in the water, trivalve chases after these flashes. And the copepod slips away, unseen into the darkness. At around 3,000 meters, the continental slope finally folds and joins what is known as the abyssal crevices. This covers over half of this planet's surface. Mostly, it's full of sloped edges, but in places, it's gashed by cave systems hundreds of miles long. The deepest of these is the Ice Basin Trench, which drops to over 7 miles below sea level. There are 1,000 times fewer animals down here than in the dark zone. But in places, hundreds of eye jellies flow over the sloped seabed in search of food. Fish have been found right down to the very bottom of the deepest trenches. Most of them come from one singular family. The aptly named peepers. They forage near the sea floor and use their battery of sensory pupils to follow fatty oil trails from rotting carcasses. Peepers can travel very long distances across these abyssal crevices in search of food. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the abyssal crevices. Every dive still produces complete surprises. This deep-sea octopus is about the size of a beach ball. It has been nicknamed Dumbo. An umbrella of skin between its tentacles and its extraordinary flapping ears allow Dumbo to hover effortlessly over the sea floor as it searches for food. So far, we have explored just 1% of the ocean of this fantastical planet, and only 0.2% of its deep oceanic floors. So who knows what might still be out there to be discovered, waiting in the open blue or in the dark depths for the light of science to find them.